Okay, being able to deal with the ways we hurt each other in marriage is vital if we are going to build and maintain intimacy. The little diagram that's in your book, the House of Cards, shows why. It shows that intimacy is built on openness, which is why communication is so important in marriage. We've already talked about communication. Openness is built on trust. We are not open with someone if we are afraid that they might use information against us. That's huge. Trust is built on the ability to heal hurt within your marriage. Otherwise, the hurt undermines total trust between us, which stops us from being open, and then the whole edifice comes falling down. There's nothing more to be supported, and intimacy is destroyed. We all hurt each other. It's part of life. It's inevitable, although often unintentional. The closer the relationship, the more potential there is for hurt. Imagine a husband sees his wife upset and says, "What's the matter with you now?" Or a wife says to her husband as he is doing his best to park the car, "What are you doing?" In each case, the way they said that, their feelings are going to be hurt. Our reactions to being hurt. We're going to go over some of these reactions. The level of our reaction will depend on the level of our hurt, how deep the hurt is. The first one we're going to talk about is anger, which comes a split second after the hurt. While hurt is what we feel about ourselves, anger is what we feel towards those who inflict the hurt on us. People display anger differently, as we saw in the last session. Roughly half the population lets you know when they are angry. They are in danger of acting like a rhino. The other half tends to hide their anger. They might be sullen or withdrawn when they're angry, and they are the little hedgehogs. They curl up in a ball, put out their spikes to keep others at a distance. Hedgehog behavior is no less harmful than rhino behavior. Some people alternate between hedgehog and rhino behavior. They let their anger smolder inside, and then they explode and act like a rhino. And for a long time, that was me. That was how I responded to life. In fact, when Les first met me, that was my only way that I resolved anything, was to just shut down. And I tell you what, it was a contest. Let's see how long I can not talk to you, how long I cannot eat, it just was just pile it on. And the longer I could do it, the better. And then by the time I was able to deal with it, it was uncontrolled, unresolved, explosive anger. And I know that there are people who look at me, who know me, and think that's really hard to believe, but it was very real, and he can attest to that. The issue is not whether we hurt each other, but it's what we do with the anger when we are hurt.
Okay, another reaction is retaliation, and how many of us have retaliated. We get hurt, and so the first thing we do is we want to hurt the other person or get back at them in some way. And that was probably, I tended to retaliate a bit, but Teresa used this one as well. And depend on whether she was in the hedgehog or the rhino mode. And if she was in rhino mode, she was very retaliatory. So that was a good one. Mm-hmm. Fear is another one. We tend to withdraw so we don't get hurt. We want to shut down. It's like with the hedgehog. The hedgehog sticks its little prickles out so that nothing gets close to it. And again, this was a big one for Teresa and I as well. But usually it was because of something that I did. And it was, I had a need, or at least I felt that I did, that I had to, every encounter that we had, I felt it was necessary for me to win. So with that win mentality, that would put Teresa into a real fear type of an approach as well. And it just didn't work well. Another one is resentment. And this tends to happen when you don't deal with any of the hurts, when you don't have any of the other type of responses. You just pack it in, you don't say anything, you just leave it in there, you wait till the next time, and it happens again, and pretty soon it just keeps getting packed in there. And I'm going to have a little example of that here in just a second. Another is guilt. Whether we admit it or not, we experience guilt because hurt will always be two ways in any marriage. We can feel, even though Teresa may have initiated the hurt, I may feel guilty about that simply because of just where I'm at. So that's one of those things that just happens. If hurt's not healed effectively, these reactions cause a distance to become between us. And I'm going to use this as an illustration. Think of each one of these each page as a separate day. So I have different things on here. I won't read to you.
And I don't know what he has on
what
there,
they
so.
are, and I'm not going to share you. But like this day, Teresa had like 5 things on there. Okay, and this day she had 3 things where she just totally messed up. Here's 4 things, and I understand these are unresolved. So each day, if you don't resolve it, it just keeps. It not only do you have new things that get added the next day, but you still have the old stuff that's out there. So here's another day. She had 4 things. Here she had. This was just a banner day for her. She had like 7 things on this particular day.
Thanks, honey. He's an accountant. Does that tell you anything?
I keep track of this stuff.
Yeah.
No, so here's 5 things on this day. But that's what happens. We tend to, if we don't deal with it, it builds up. There's a backlog of resentment, a backlog of bitterness. And that's really what happens. That's what happens in a lot of relationships, where it just builds to the point where it's a breaking point, and where finally something has to give. What's the straw that breaks the camel's back? What is it? What's the last thing? I've got one nerve left, and you're standing on it. What is it that really sends you over the edge? And this is what happens with a lot of marriages, and it can go on for years. And this is when we talk about unresolved, when we don't resolve these things, that's exactly what tends to start taking place. And then it becomes also a kitchen sink type approach. But anyway, we'll come back to this particular example a little later on in the session. But remember how things tend to build up.
And, we've talked before about how some of that may come from your upbringing. If that's what you saw displayed in your home, that was the way you learned how to respond to anger. Whether you kept the list or, let it build up till you become explosive. So it's so critical to really look at how you're dealing with your anger. The Bible says, in your anger, do not sin. Ephesians 4:26. Anger is not wrong in itself. It is part of a God-given mechanism to take action to mend your relationship. Anger has a purpose, but only for a short time. As the next line makes clear in Ephesians 4:27, do not let the sun go down while you still are angry, and do not give the devil a foothold, because he loves it. He just has a heyday with what he can do with anger. Anger must be controlled and not buried. There's a statement that was made out of a book called Marriage as God Intended. It says, an emotion is not buried dead, it is buried alive. And that is so true. It just doesn't lay there and go away. It just gets festered. It's like an open wound that just keeps festering. Buried anger in time turns to hate. One of the things that Princess Diana brought to the world's attention was landmines. It was a big, huge thing of hers because she watched how it maimed and killed people, innocent people. And so we relate that to the domestic counterpart, where there's buried anger and unresolved hurt. There's nothing on the surface, but what happens? You tread lightly because you don't know where it's going to blow. And we live like that in the first part of our marriage. There was a lot of times he was like walking around landmines because he didn't know what it was going to do or when I would blow. Listed in your manual are some of the effects of buried hurt and anger. So we're going to go through those. Physical symptoms, disturbed sleep patterns. We can't go to sleep or stay asleep. Appetites affected. Medical conditions such as ulcers, high blood pressure, headaches. It affects your behavior, an inability to relax, low sexual desire, quick temper, and intolerance. And I'm going to kind of share a story with you about my behavior in this arena when it came to anger. I had a mother who was a perfectionist. I lived a major portion of our first married life as a perfectionist, and it's basically what I call obsessive compulsive behavior, that I would lead people to believe that everything was okay in my life if I looked okay, my kids were doing okay, my job was great, my home was cleaned up, but what was going on down inside of me was a war zone. And you can only bury that so long before something happens. So my way of dealing with that is to control everything around me, on the outside of me, including my family and my husband. Then for me, I was in control. And so the story I'm going to share with you is about a trip that we took to Salt Lake City. It was a soccer tournament, and we went there. And I had planned everything. I was the team manager when Les coached. And so for me, it fit my obsessive compulsive behavior to a T, because I planned everything from rooms to collecting money to whatever we did as extra activities, wherever we ate, whatever it was, I did. So go there and, everything's kind of clicking off. And, of course, you go to Utah and you can't play on Sundays. And so we had to find something to do on Sunday because the tournament finished on Monday. And so we had planned to go to Lagoon. So we were going to have a picnic there, everything, and have fun. Well, the forecast was predicting that there might be rain on Sunday, and I'm like, oh, this will be great. What do we do if there's rain? I'm not going to worry about it. It'll be okay. Well, Sunday we woke up, and it was yucky. It was raining, and I'm just sitting there going, oh, my gosh, this can't be happening. What am I going to do? Like, I have control over the rain, but that's what I'm thinking. I mean, this is how out of whack you can get. And so I had some parents who just wanted to be a little proactive and thought, well, we can do something different. We can kind of reorganize something. And, well, that was all it took.
Wrong thing.
Wrong thing. Don't mess with my plans. I'm in control here. And so once that started, it was like a snowball effect for me. And it was just a buildup of things. I mean, this was a big explosive thing, but back behind that had come a whole bunch of things that had brought me to this point. So this is how I responded to that situation. I wanted to cry, but didn't, because I'm like, nobody's going to see me cry. I don't want them to know what's going on. And I was so upset. And Derek, our son, knew I was upset. He very sensitive, caring young man. And he knew Mom was really upset. Les knew I was upset. He was trying to calm me down. And I just said, forget it. I'm out of here. I picked up the phone.
Literally.
Picked up the phone, bought myself a plane ticket home, called a taxi to come pick me up, packed my bags, and I left in the rain. And you guys who don't know me don't know how hard that was for me, because I lived and breathed watching my son play soccer. He was an incredible athlete. The tournament wasn't over. In fact, in all likelihood, they were going to the championship game.
And we did.
I'm
sorry.
Don't interrupt.
See, here we go.
And I forgive you.
Okay.
All the way to the airport, I'm just turning inside thinking, this is the stupidest thing. What do you think you're doing? What are your kids thinking? What are your husband thinking? What are all the people on the team thinking? And I did it. And you guys, I can remember still flying over the mountains, looking out the window, bawling all the way home, thinking, oh my God, what have I just done? How stupid. Get to the airport. No ride. It wasn't like I had a car waiting for me. Call a taxi. No money to pay for the taxi. He had to drop me off at Albertsons so I could go to the ATM. Pouring rain. Just pouring rain the whole time. Get home and sit on my couch, and I'm just a mess. I call my doctor, and I'm like, this is crazy. And understanding that I've dealt with depression a lot in my life, and I'm just trying to keep everything on track here. And I'll never forget the phone call with my son. That Monday, and I called him because I could hardly wait to see if they'd won. And he says, "Mom, I wish you were here." And I said, "I'm so sorry. So sorry I've disappointed you. So sorry I disappointed Dad." And I had to live with that because I missed out. And they went on to win the championship game. And so when they came home, I had to sit down with my family and with Les and apologize to him. I mean, it's like, here's this poor guy trying to keep it all together and trying to answer people's questions. Well, where's Teresa? Why is she not here? Imagine as a husband trying to do that. And then Derek with his friends. "Well, where's your mom?" And I was like the biggest cheerleader there was on the sideline, believe me. And so that's the danger of what happens when we hold it in and hold it in. We don't know how it's going to look when it comes out. And it can look really bad and really ugly, and it can hurt a lot of people. And you can have to ask forgiveness from people you couldn't have even imagined asking forgiveness from. Another thing is escape to drugs and alcohol, or into your work, or through the fantasy world of pornography, or throwing all of our emotions and our energy into looking after our kids. Emotional symptoms, loss of positive emotions, such as romance, love, and joy. Another one for me was low self-esteem and depression. Definitely behavior that was affected by the anger that I just had built up in my life from my first divorce to so many things that I hadn't dealt with and that Les and I hadn't dealt with. Shut down. People try to avoid the pain by not allowing themselves to feel anything anymore. You just act like, well, it's just not going to bother me. I'm not going to let it bother me. Well, that's totally unrealistic, because that's what I did after my first marriage. And then when Les and I were first married, he paid a huge price for that, because I had built up walls around me that nobody could get in. And every once in a while, I still return to that kind of behavior, or I just shut everybody out, him, my friends. Sometimes a husband or a wife says to us, "I don't feel loving, romantic, and hopeful. I don't feel anything for my partner. I feel numb," and then they divorce. Some then take the resolved hurt into their next marriage. Perhaps that is why there is a high level of breakdown for second and subsequent marriages. And thank God that I had a husband who loved and cared about me enough that we weren't going to let me stay where I was. That we were going to make sure that all those things that I dealt with and he had to deal with, that we were able to move on from them. Because it didn't just affect him, it affected our kids too. That's the bad news. We have spent some time on it because unresolved pain and buried anger destroy intimacy and destroy marriages. And, I have to be honest with you guys. In my first marriage, anger wasn't just from my side. It was from his side. And I ended up leaving that relationship because of physical and emotional abuse. And when those things happen in your life, the scars that are left from that you bring into your next marriage, if you don't take care of, will destroy you. And they'll destroy the people that you are now a part of your life.
Okay, so we have to ask ourselves, how can we restore intimacy? And in Ephesians 4:31, it says, "Get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger." And there's a way to heal the hurt, but people don't often look deep enough into it. They don't want to spend the time to deal with it. They only look at the symptoms. They know that something's wrong and something's not working, but they really don't want to focus on that. But in order to do that, we've got to face, the ugly side of it.